Now that we've worked more with colliders, let's work a bit more with triggers as well. To my scene, I've added a basic cube that just comes with its normal things, but I'm turning the trigger on. And, well, just to really clearly see the difference here, let's first try to interact with it with its trigger off. I can turn and I run into this box and it's blocking my path as a solid object. But if I turn it into a trigger, suddenly I can walk right through it. This is because the trigger collider isn't meant to be about preventing movement or acting as a collision. It's meant to be a zone or a region that has a triggered event once I'm entering or exiting its range. Kind of like we did with the staircase when we triggered the message for entering the staircase area. So what I want to think about doing is thinking about how I can work with triggers in different ways. To do this, we are going to snag our 3 scripts that we haven't added yet. Proximity detector, toggle on or off, and object color changer. I'm going to import these to kind of see how we can work with these to try out and play with this mechanic. I am going to attach the object color changer to this block. And what this script does is pretty simple. It checks for a trigger enter event, meaning that if something enters my trigger range, my collider, that's a trigger, and it's tagged as a player, meaning I have to make sure this player is tagged as a player to be able to interact with it. Basically, this means that if anything else comes into contact with this in the world that won't trigger this, only my player can. I want to change the color of this block like we did before. Let's take a look at what happens now. Now, if my player touches this, the color changes. And if I move away and touch it again, it should change once again. Every time I enter, it changes the color. Notice while I'm inside of it, it doesn't keep on changing the color. That's because this is on trigger enter, and it only happens the moment that I enter it. And it takes fully leaving it and entering it back again to be triggered one more time. Just so you know, we actually have an on trigger exit command that we can run as well. So you know what? Let's just try this out. Let's also change the color on exit, just to kind of see how this works in more detail. So I'm adding an exit condition. So now if I touch it, it changes color. And then when I leave, it changes color again. Enter, exit, enter, exit. That's how these trigger events work. But there's a slight problem with this, which is that right now, I can actually go through this, which is maybe the mechanic that I want. But what if I wanted this to be triggered, but also still have me be able to like not walk through it, to have this color change? Well, now we have to mix and match triggers a little bit by creating multiple colliders. Now, there is a limitation to this, which is we can't have more than one of the same type of collider, but there's nothing stopping us from mixing and matching 2 different types of colliders. Here, I've added a sphere collider. And what I'm going to be doing is having this sphere collider take on the rough proportions of the shape, which it looks like it's done here. However, I want to make sure that it stretches out just a little bit beyond it. Actually, I prefer kind of it to be enough to reach the edges of the shape here so that I can make sure that I trigger it no matter which way I'm touching it pretty confidently. That looks like it's pretty good here. And making sure that this sphere collider is a trigger and this box collider isn't, because the box is what I want to run up against and the sphere is what I want to have trigger the color change. So now by mixing and matching both of these things, when I run my game and I go over, I now trigger the color change, but can't move through the block because it has the actual collider for the physics, but the sphere trigger for the color change. Pretty cool. One other awesome thing that I can do with this is what if I took the sphere collider and I made it substantially larger? Now what I'm doing is creating a range, kind of a force field zone that's going to trigger this responsiveness. Oops, clicked off it there. Let's try to snag this little corner and pull it out. So now I have, let's actually make this quite a bit bigger. Now I have a zone. Anything inside of this sphere is a trigger zone for the color change, which means that the color is going to change not only if I touch it directly, but even if I just pass by. I walk past it and the color changes. And I can make this trigger zone as big or as small as I want it to be. So now I have something that's responsive to my player passing by it rather than having to touch it directly. A pretty powerful thing for working with some mechanics in our game. All right, let's try a different one here. We're going to add the ability to have something turn on or off based off of proximity, and also learn another visual design strategy at the same time. I'm going to go into my materials, and I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to call this glowing orb. And what I want this material to do is cause a shape to not only have color, but also emit light. So we are going to go to the material, and we're going to check this emission option and turn it on. And then add some color to it from the panel here, which I'm going to make this nice bright white. And now this is going to be able to emit that color as kind of a glow, especially if the lights turn off. This is going to look cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a sphere to my scene, and maybe I'll just drop it over here. Let's go and align it with view. Drop it down over here somewhere. And I want to attach to my sphere this glowing orb material. Now the material for this is this glowing emission instead of the normal kind of waiting for the lighting system in the game to affect it type of thing. So now if I turn off all the lights, you should see that this material emits this color very distinctly, and it's this new glowing orb that I can walk around. So this is kind of cool. It emits light, and it's going to be able to potentially be a source of, if I attach like a light to it, for example. So this, well, the reason I do this, let me show you here, is a glowing orb, is that if I just add a light into the world at a place, I don't actually see the light glowing. I just see the effects of the light. So what I can do with this glowing orb is actually attach a light to it, like a little bit of an area light. And actually, let's just do, because I have to bake that in, let's just do a point light that's going to emit some light and set the intensity up a little bit. And what this is going to allow to have happen is that this appears to be casting light around it, even though the glowing orb doesn't cast light. The point light does. And even though the point light can't be seen, the glowing orb can be. So these together work as a team to make it look like I have some light emitting object floating there that casts light on the ground when they're working together as a team, which is pretty cool. And in my game, I can think about a scenario where, let's see if I can get it centered here well enough. Let's go. If I turn this off, couldn't get it centered. Now that light has disappeared, and I can re-enable it again. So I have this kind of cool effect of a glowing light appearing, this magical system that might be kind of a cool game mechanic. What can I do with this to make it a little more interesting than just sitting there automatically? Well, under my scripts, I have a proximity detector script that I'm going to attach here. Let's take a look at what this does. This proximity detector script that I've attached to, or I should attach it to my glowing orb, not to my point light. Let's attach it to the right thing here. Proximity detector. What it's going to do is it's taking a look for the renderer of this ball, the renderer that gives this ball its visual look. And I'm also going to be accessing the light that's attached to it. I'm going to be accessing both of these, the ball directly and the light component in children. For the coders, this allows me to get it even though it's a child of the orb. And depending on what type of collision or trigger I have, if I enter the zone, the region around it that I'm going to define, then I want to turn them on. And if I leave them, the area, I want to turn them off. So all that's left to do is actually take the sphere collider and make it larger so that I have a region I can turn it on or off in rather than having to be right up against it. So I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm just going to expand this out and make this quite a bit larger. Try to keep it roughly centered. And let's just make this quite a bit bigger so it's nice and obvious to what it is, to where it is we can trigger this in our world. So now what I've done is I've created a zone where this light will be toggled on or off. And now if I enter into my game and start playing it, I see the staircase, and it's a dark, eerie corner over here. But as I get close to this section over here, I can't move against it because I've made a little error. I forgot to turn it to a trigger. So it's actually a physics object, an invisible force field. Good error to make, just to remind ourselves of how these things all work. But let's get this fixed, Mr. Owl. And as I get close here, bam, this light turns on and off, depending on me getting close or further away. And I have this cool kind of nice guiding light that is a nice little proximity detector like we have in real life outside our homes. These little zones to be able to illuminate our path. And I can imagine a mechanic now where I can add this, rather than it being down here, remember, actually we can make prefabs of this, so I can have more glowing orbs in other spots. What if I added a glowing orb over here on this kind of further part of this pathway here, so that now, as I kind of get closer to this section, even though I couldn't see it from the start, once I get into this region where this light led me, I have a hint about where to go next because of this proximity detection. Let's just playtest this because I feel like it. Jump up here, make my jump. Oh, it's rotating. I forgot about that. Maybe let's turn off the rotating because that's causing us some problems. Flancy platform. Let's not spin this object because it's a little too tough. I need to kind of clarify that game mechanic a little bit more. Let's just have it sit there and remind us where to jump here. Oh, those lights. I missed. Okay, one more try. You get this beautiful playtest failure to enjoy and laugh at as you see fit. Let's make this big jump a little more forward. Did I make it? I did this time. Let's make this jump. I didn't jump, but that's okay. And now that I'm in the zone, okay, I have some extra help here. Now I can get up here, and of course, I'm in the dark now. But you can imagine for yourself some cool game mechanics that could kind of expand from this with that region trigger. All right, one more for us. Let's get this light back to illuminating our scene a little bit here. And one more thing that I've provided you is this toggle on or off thing, where what I'm gonna do actually is I'm gonna change this from having, actually, we'll leave this. This is kind of a cool thing to have here. I'm gonna make a new cube. I'm gonna move it right down kind of near this wall here. Let's reset its, or set its position, sorry, game object, align with view, and have this, and what I'm gonna do is unrotate this, and I'm gonna flatten it out, squish it down, so that it's just a little pad that I'm able to interact with. And what I'm gonna do with this pad is I'm gonna increase the collider to be a little bit higher than it. So it's something that I can step on, but that has a bit of a zone for me to kind of touch that's a little bit higher than just connecting with it directly. And now what I'm gonna do is attach this toggle on or off script to it. How does the script work? What I do is I'm actually looking for some other object that I can set to off or to on, or active and inactive in the scene if I trigger the player. I'm only using a trigger enter here because I don't want it to turn on and off as I go on it and off it. I want it to only do it once each time I touch it. Let me show you what I mean. The last thing I need to do here is connect to this the thing that I want to turn on or off. It would make sense to maybe do this wall. So actually, let's rename this to wall, just to be clear here. And this script now needs a connection to that wall. Now when I run my game, if my player triggers this, I have somehow not had things go properly, because guess what I did again? I did it again. I did not set this to trigger because, well, I'm forgetful. Let's try this again. Now that I trigger it, it's not working once again. What have I done this time? Let me troubleshoot really quick. All right, I'm back, students. Hopefully you didn't miss me too much. The problem was my platform was a tiny bit of a unit too low. It was clipping the ground, which cut off Unity detecting my trigger zone. All I had to do was lift it up ever so slightly, and it's hopefully that's enough now, so that it's not clipping into the ground, which I didn't notice before. And it's still thinking it's a little bit too low for some reason. Interesting. I wonder why it's doing so. Maybe it's because of the bottom. Now be careful of this. The bottom part of the collider, try not to have that clipping into the ground whatsoever. So I'm going to actually move that up a little bit above the level of this platform here. And let's just see if this is enough to work now. A little bit of live troubleshooting for you here. And now I should see, there we go, that when I touch it the first time, it disappears. And then when I touch it again, it reappears. So I can toggle it off, toggle it on. This time, I want the behavior to be that it doesn't toggle it back on when I leave it, because I want it to actually be gone so that I can move through this area and then toggle back off. And now that was the destroy script in action here. That was a different thing than toggle on or off. And now that it's destroyed, I can't actually toggle it on or off because I've destroyed it. So a couple things interacting there, but there you go. You're able to have things toggle on or off. And I could, for example, instead of having it do that with the wall, maybe I have it do with the stairs instead, to provide the player with a little puzzle to solve to figure out maybe the stairs aren't there in the first place. I have to go, oh, what do I do to get up to that platform? Seems a bit high. Oh, there's a staircase that I can now interact with. And so there's a few more mechanics that you have to work with to be able to add some more interactivity using triggers. The basic principle here being that you can create zones or regions of interactivity that trigger responsiveness, like turning things on or off, enabling or disabling things, or maybe simply causing a change of state like color to happen. All right, that's a lot of content. Spend some time exploring and experimenting with these scripts, and maybe see if you can come up with a few different responses of your own by playing around or doing a bit of research online. And I'll see you for a couple more videos to wrap up this extensive tutorial series.